All right, thank you all for joining us for the Creating and Maintaining a Curriculum Vitae workshop. Joining us today is Dr. Darren Vetter, Career and Professional Development Specialist. He's going to discuss how to effectively build out a curriculum vitae in order to gain a competitive advantage in your field. I'm going to hand it over to him to get us started.
All right, thanks guys. Let me make sure this is gonna work. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Perfect, man. I love technology when I figure it out. So welcome everybody. I see a lot of familiar names on the list of participants today. I guess if you can watch the chat, look at the chat if they have questions. I try to keep these informal as we go through. So if you have questions, you can stop anytime or raise your hand or just shout out and unmute yourself if you want. My name is Dr. Darren Vetter. I've been here for almost a year and a half now at Career Services. And before that, I worked in business for about 15 years. So we'll talk about the Curriculum Vitae, we'll go over it, and then I do have a couple examples. One that I already mentioned is we made a generic here at Career Services. So it's a 2-page generic Curriculum Vitae. It's made in Microsoft Word. It's already formatted. So that's something that I think will be sent to you guys, or you guys can reach out to me and I can send it to you. And then I'll show you an example of another one that as we go through this, you'll see some different points about the Curriculum Vitae, but the one I have an example of is 68 pages long. And don't worry, we're not going to go through all of that. So some quick summary on what we do over here at Career Services. We prepare students for career readiness. So career and professional development is my job. So it helps with resumes, cover letters, interviews. I do a lot of workshops with classes. I do a lot of workshops with the grad college. So we do a lot of fun stuff, mentoring, internships, and experiential learning. So we're really getting into this a lot more. The school's really focused on internships. And so we have a bigger push coming from the president and the provost now on internships. So you'll see more of that coming from Career Services. And then we connect you with employers and finding employment. And you'll see on a slide later, we have a big month of March coming up with a Prepare for the Fair event, an employer panel, and then our big career fair, which is on its way. So career and professional development, so resumes, curriculum vitae, that's what we'll go over today, cover letter building. There's no such thing as a perfect resume. I've had this conversation a lot. Interview preparation, so we can help you practice with interview skills, meet with a career coach, help with job interview preparation, job searching, so navigating the job boards, how to effectively apply for an opportunity, and then job offers and salary negotiation too. We help with this a lot. So if anybody's got a job coming up and they need help with salary negotiation, reach out to us. And then as I mentioned, the workshops, we do a lot of these across campus, which is really good. So next thing, Career Toolkit. So during the pandemic, the funny story about the Career Toolkit is that it went away during the pandemic. We had a book that was like 58 pages, had advertising in it, and had examples of everything, interviews, resumes, cover letters. It's coming back. So in hopefully early March of this year, we'll have the prints done. I think we're doing 10 or 15,000 original copies. And so the career handbook that's in print is coming back. Right now, it's on our Career Services website, and it has all these different things: resumes, cover letters, finding a job, interviewing. For every one of these topics, there is about 6 bullet points that are on there that are connected that lead you to PDFs that are 2 pages that have a bunch of information on them. So reach out anytime on that. So the basics of a curriculum vitae. So what is it? So it's more detailed than a resume. Resumes are typically 1 to 2 pages. The Curriculum Vitae is providing a full history of academic credentials. So it's typically, and appropriately, it's much longer. It is required for individuals seeking fellowships, grants, postdoctoral positions, and teaching or research positions in secondary and academic institutions. So grad school applications too, a lot of these are typically requesting a curriculum vitae. And as we go through the parts and pieces, you'll see that there's a lot of different pieces and information that's added into it that's way different than a resume, or that's over and above what the resume normally entails. So the thing that we always recommend too is get advice. So when you're creating a curriculum vitae, we see a ton of different formats. We see a ton of different lengths. We see a ton of different designs on how they're put together. So there's a lot of information, but it's always a good thing to get advice from colleagues. The best people to get advice from are your professors. So every professor here at UNLV has a curriculum vitae built. The problem that we run into, people like myself run into, is we forget stuff to add to our curriculum vitae because you end up doing so much stuff in one year, you forget to add it. But we'll talk about that when we get to the maintaining part of all this. Any questions so far? Is everybody good? So what is it? So it's a comprehensive statement, educational background, teaching and research experience. So academic positions at a four-year institution, that's what it's used for applying for. The other areas that you see curriculum vitas is in a lot of areas that are research based. So biology jobs, chemistry jobs, things like that. The parts and pieces of the curriculum vitae that you'll see, one of the main ones is research interest. So if you're applying for a job and you're based in science, they definitely want to know what you've researched and what you're curious about researching in the future, because this kind of deals too with education. It deals with grants and funding and different things that are important to the school. Tailor the curriculum vitae for the specific position. So we do this with all the resumes. Try to use the curriculum vitae and tweak it a little bit to have more keywords come out that match the job description. And then in this one, describe your experiences. So with the curriculum vitae, you'll see some that are written out as paragraphs. And I mean several paragraphs that are listing information. Resumes are usually just bullet points. So bullet points, pretty short, one line, and they're pretty concise. But with the curriculum vitae, you have that experience to just expand that information and really provide a lot more information about yourself. So accomplishments are a big one on there. So when you do the curriculum vitae, you'll want to list things like scholarships that you've earned. If you've been on the dean's list, you'll want to list that information. So it's anything that you have on big accomplishments. One section that can be added that I just helped a student with yesterday was additional training. They had all this additional training that was all over the place, but when you started listing it, it started making sense on how well the additional training filled out, and it filled out almost an entire page of the resume because they had so much additional training that was done. It was some sales things, it was some HR things, but what it turned out to be was a really good summary of HR training. So there is no page limit on the curriculum vitae. So on average, 4 to 16 pages is pretty much what you'll see on most curriculum vitas. We've viewed some here that we've had for people applying for vice president positions at UNLV. Even for those people, those typically are 14 to 16 pages. Sometimes there's a 20 page. So length is never an issue on the curriculum vitae. Language or technical skills, that may also add your qualifications too. So we keep that as a section. And then you'll see our little picture over here. You got a summary, you got some general info, education, work experience, interests and hobbies, and skills and competencies. So those are all part of the inclusion with this. So sections, so we can spend like 8 hours if we want to talking about all these different sections, but here's the summary of what it is. The heading that we typically recommend is similar to your resume. If your resume looks a certain way on the heading, make your curriculum vitae look the same way. Education is typically going to be the next part. So there you'll list all your higher education. You don't include high school in a curriculum vitae, but you can include high school accomplishments if those are relevant for what you're applying for. Recent and current research. So this is a big one, like I said, especially in the sciences, but also it applies to higher education institutions. They kind of want to know for sure, what are you researching? What are you looking at? Are you looking at something new? So this is where the research and the current research really plays a big part. Relevant experience. So this goes back to work experience. You can list this pretty much similar to a resume. There are certain times when we see curriculum vitas where we're expanded upon on work experience because people have jobs where part of their job, they might have trained a lot of employees. That doesn't always hit the resume, and they'll add information like that. Grants received, as I mentioned too, this is a big one. So this is a good one so on a curriculum vitae, they know that you're out there seeking funding, you're seeking money. Scholarships are the same way with like grants received, you're seeking funding, things to help yourself with your education. Publications, this is a big one too, especially when you look at the amount of people that we have that apply here for jobs and for positions as professors. As staff here, we get UNLV Today, which comes every day, which will list accomplishments that people post, and it's publications. We have a lot of people that get published like once or twice a month, which is amazing. So they're working on different presentations or different publications the whole time. So that can really add up. And those are very important too, because on the curriculum vitae, they want to see, have you been published? Have you worked with a professor and published a paper? So things like that. And then presentations. So oral presentations and poster presentations. So this is one part of a curriculum vitae too, that a lot of people will attend conferences. Attending conferences is listed on the curriculum vitae as one thing. So as conference attendance under one section. you could present at the same conference. That lists as a separate section under presentations. So that's where sometimes the headings get a little bit confusing, but you're like, how much information can I include? And presentations include oral and poster. We just saw a poster presentation last year at Desert Research Institute. That was a program done with NASA. They had about 20 students that developed posters that were very interesting. Those would be things that are categorized. So as I'm talking about this so far, your brains might be turned a little bit. The problem with the maintenance part of this and maintaining the curriculum vitae is that you got to have a way to log this information. You're doing these things over the time of your career, over the time of your experience at school. So it's a system of logging too that I'll mention again here in a little bit. So qualifications or skills. So this is important in different areas where you want to list computer qualifications that you have. If you're in sciences, you'll want to list different things that you've used in labs. And so that's where qualifications and skills can be a big part. Different computer programs become very important to different companies too. So that's where that comes under the qualifications and skills.
Sorry, Dr. Ritter,
Yep.
to cut you off. One student is asking a question. Can I include non-peer reviewed articles?
Typically, you don't. So typically on a curriculum vitae, the articles that are included under publication are going to be things that ended up in so you can pick anything, a newspaper, a magazine, a journal. If they're just peer reviewed and they're not published, then typically you would not. That makes sense?
Yes, but these are published articles in national
Okay.
publications, but it's newspapers, magazines, but not peer reviewed. Can I include those?
Yep, absolutely. Those, it doesn't matter if they're peer reviewed. So you'll see some listings on Curriculum Vitae, you'll see listings of hundreds of publications. And so these can be a variety of different things too, because some people forget about things like that. Like if you submit to like a magazine, what's the other thing that's come up now with publication too? It's web-based articles too.
Mm-hmm.
On a
Okay,
Curriculum Vitae, it's okay to have a paste or copy and paste of that website where that article exists too and have that on the Curriculum Vitae.
thank you.
That's a great question. That led to a good point. I would have forgot about and the other thing too that just came up that we see more now and too is people that do media. So I did a Let's Talk UNLV last fall. I got to put it on my curriculum vitae as a media thing that I did because I've never had one of those that I did. So yeah, super question. Professional organizations. So this can be anything that you've done. It can be student organizations, those qualify. It can be any organizations like Phi Kappa Phi, so honor societies, Golden Key, different things like that. So any professional organizations like that. But then also as you get into business and different functions, there's other professional organizations. Society of Human Resource Managers, SHRM is their abbreviation. SHRM is super popular. If you're a member of that, that's the type of professional organization to list with that. Community involvement can be really good. So this can be listed either as volunteer information or just as general community involvement. It shows a lot about a person when you look at a curriculum vitae or even a resume and you see information on there where they have 3 or 4 listings of working with Goodwill or working with Opportunity Village here in Vegas or working with one of those organizations and volunteering their time. If they volunteered as a tutor with a high school or a tutor with a grade school to help students or whatever, that community involvement is very important. So you want to take some time and make sure you don't forget any of that because that looks really great and it stands out really good on the resume. Certifications, a list of those can be included also. So if you got certifications for different things, courses that you completed, things like that, that require a separate certification, that's important stuff. And then the last one on here is references. So this is really a key difference compared to a resume. Most job postings right now, when you apply for the job, internships, yes. So somebody just put that, I saw the question pop up. Internships, yes, should be listed. Typically that goes with education. So typically your internship is going to be matched up to your education, your degree that you're going to get. And that's kind of usually where you put that in there. And then I can't see the whole question for community involvement here. Hang on, let me open this thing. What is it doing?
You want me to read it to you?
Yeah, can you read it?
Yeah. Community involvement, can you list those you worked for and volunteered?
Yes. So community involvement is, we always tell people it's a couple different things. Like when you're working on a resume, paid work, you'd put under work experience for paid jobs. If you worked for that company, but you also volunteered to it, you could list it twice on both the resume and a curriculum vitae. Great
And then
question.
from Amy, would charity organizations be under professional organizations or community involvement? Is chair a local food charity?
Probably
chair
under
a
community involvement. but like I said, there's no perfect way to build this thing. And the Curriculum Vitae and the resume both are not legal documents. So that's where you get a little bit of creativity on how you want to list that. So that's a good one. That's a good question. But I would think community involvement.
I think
Because
those are
community
all.
involvement too, don't forget, can be really expansive too. If you help out with a church, if you help out with not just with a nonprofit, if you volunteer to like do something at like a football game, those are all things that are part of your community or part of where you live. And that's kind of the best way to think about those. Anything else?
I think those are all the questions.
Yeah, I figured it out, man. I got the chat open now too, so maybe this will be a little bit easier now. Okay, so excellent questions so far to everybody. So with references, the thing I was mentioning too, on a lot of job applications, references is a separate section. So what we encourage students and alumni that we work with here, make a separate Word document or Google document. On that separate document, have at least 3 professional references and include their name, their job title, the company where they work at, their email, and their phone number. Home addresses, business addresses, that's usually not as necessary. But on references for a Curriculum Vitae, you can list that information. Usually it's done at the end. The last page of the Curriculum Vitae usually is 3 or 4. And you can always list a mix of references too. 2 professional is what we always recommend, and 1 personal. So that way you got 2 professional in there, you got 1 personal. I had a student one time that listed 6 on their last page of their Curriculum Vitae. It was 3 personal and 3 professional, which is totally fine. So like I said, there's no exact way to do that. So a little creativity is okay with that part too. So any other questions so far? Cool. Next slide. So here's a couple examples that we put together. And so these work out really good when you're trying to just compare. Can everybody see these okay? I think hopefully you guys all can. So we have John Smith on the left and we have Jane Doe on the right. So when you look at just the basic formatting, the resume on the left is like our main formatting design that we like here at Career Services. So bold and underline on all the headings, all the titles, the degrees are all in bold also. The student leadership, student vice president leadership, that's in bold. When you go to the Curriculum Vitae, it's a different formatting. Just like I said, you have a lot more flexibility in how you format it. Here, the headings are outlined with lines. They have the information in the middle of the paper. University of Nevada, Las Vegas, they got the bachelor's degree, research interests. So that's one part that in some cases, that can be pages long. It can be a number of bullet points. So that's one area where it can really expand a Curriculum Vitae. Research experience here. So they list research assistant at UNLV, biological sciences, and they've been doing that. So May 26th to present. So that's another place too, where for our example, we try to keep this on one page. But when you get to things like research experience and the amount of bullet points, that can be expanded. It could be 10 or 15 bullet points on that one thing. And that is not a bad thing at all. Internship experience, which is on here. So you have some internship experience that's listed in there. Also intern Las Vegas Water District. And so it's got a few things. So does it count as an effective workshop or mandatory? Leonard, can you be more? Oh, so you're asking, he's asking a question to you guys. Okay, I got you.
That's already answered, but
Okay.
there's a new question that popped up. Maybe that's why you were seeing that. At the top, under Jane Doe, is UNLV listed because that is where they currently work?
That's listed there for a couple different reasons. Yes, where they currently work, but also they want to show that as like their main area or their last area of school. That's where there's some creativity too. You don't necessarily have to list it like that. You could have the whole information like on John Smith, you could have that be on the top of the Curriculum Vitae, but this one added some creativity by adding University of Nevada, Las Vegas on there. Good observation and great question.
Is education always at the top, no matter how long you've been in a career?
Yeah, Barbara, typically we always put education at top. So we do it with the resume, but we also do it with the Curriculum Vitae because usually the education on a Curriculum Vitae will lead into something related to that, teaching experience, research, going along with like a job in biology or whatever. So typically we do that. That's become kind of a standard. And so I think now, like with a career fair, when you have a recruiter looking at a resume, it's kind of become a standard now that the first thing they're going to see is education. They can easily grab the degree and see what degree you have.
Okay, but that doesn't matter if you've been working for 20 years. You still put education at the top.
Yep, typically yes.
Thank you.
Excellent question. So then back on this, on the Curriculum Vitae, you see publications and conferences. So One is listed here. This is where we see on some curriculum vitas that we look at where publications and conferences, this is grouped together. Normally we would separate those in two separate things. I know people that work here at UNLV that have been to like 35 conferences. So over the course of a 20-year career in education, they get invited to different things, they go to different things. And so their activity is really amazing when you look at that section. Technology and skills, this is kind of similar to how we listed on the resume. So it's using that little black up and down line. That's the guy above the return key on your keyboard. The reason why we do that on the resume is because it will record each one of those if they're separated like that. The same format can be used on technology and skills, because if you do put those in columns or list them like bullet points up and down, with technology and skills on a curriculum video, you can end up with pages and pages and pages. So that's a little bit more of a summarized way of demonstrating it. And then professional associations, that's where for some people, they can be involved in a lot of different things, especially later in their career. After they spent several years in one organization or one career, professional associations can be a bunch. So would citing method for publications and conferences be based on your area of expertise, like humanities? Yeah, absolutely. So that's how, like, I've done my whole life with APA format. I published books under APA format, so I kind of live and die by APA format. But yeah, so whatever the area of expertise is, that's how you could use that. That's correct.
For professional associations, what if you serve on something that's really prominent and you want them to see that? Does it matter if it's under professional associations, or is there somehow you can move that up near the top somehow?
You can move it up to the top. So when you look at the format and you look at the headings that are on this example, and like headings in general, it's really up to you how you want your headings to be put together. So if you're a research person, you want the research to stand out and be dominant. But if you're professional association, if you're applying for a job and it's something important and your associations match that, then absolutely that could be put right under education, or it could be even put at the top. So we like seeing education at the top of these, but it's kind of up to you on the creativity of the headlines.
Thank you.
It's like the one area of job search where you get to have fun. It's with the Curriculum Vitae, because you can kind of do your own thing. So then any more questions on these examples? All right. So that was the basis of the information. I'm going to show you a couple more examples here in a second. So we have a lot of events going on. So career fair events that we have coming up. So March 22nd is Prepare for the Fair. So that's going to be in the Armagosa room in the library on the first floor. This is a 5-hour window where we'll have career services people there to review resumes, help with LinkedIn profiles. We're limiting the time about 15 minutes per student. Last year we did this. We did not have enough time. We had 110 students show up over the course of like 3 hours. So everybody is welcome to participate in that. For you all being graduate students, March 23rd, 2023. So that's on Thursday afternoon. From 4 to 6, we're having an employer panel and mixer in the Goldfield room on the 3rd floor of the library. This worked out really good last year. We had 6 different employers that showed up from 6 different areas. They were all from Las Vegas. They were all businesses from Las Vegas. And this came out to be a really great conversation. We provided snacks and food for everybody from the 5 to 6 window for the mixer. They could visit with the employers. And then March 29th, this is our big career fair. So this year we changed the time a tiny bit. So it's 9:30 to 2 p.m. And then I think we're close to being sold out right now, but we're expecting 208 employers, and it will be that full area of Thomas and Mack next year. That whole rotunda will be full. The other thing that I'm doing too, that there's only a couple days left with too, is for the career fair. We're having student ambassadors help out with the career fair. So we're looking for 20 students to help out with the career fair that morning from 8 to 10. So if anybody's interested, I'll shoot you my email and let me know, and I can send you the flyer. You just got to send me back your resume and your information, and we can put you on that list. We have to do a drawing. I got like 25 or 27 people that already want to do it too. So we'll get it figured out. And then contacting career services. So we're over here in the Gateway building. We're on the 2nd floor. We're down here in the same area with the Graduate College. Office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. And then our career studio, which is just open hours, here is 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on both Tuesday and Wednesday. And then social media, we are way more active right now on social media than we ever have been. So that's worked out really good. So now my next part is going to be to stop sharing this one, and then I'm going to share the example that we have, which I think you guys now have by email. So 2 more things for me to show you guys here. today. So this is the generic one. So this is the one that he'll send you guys in the mails or on the email. And so this is similar to the one that you just looked at, but it's expanded quite a bit too, because we have a lot of people like at different parts of their career and different parts of their education. So we like to show this one too when we do this presentation. And don't worry, I'll show you a second one here in a minute that's even more beyond this. So when you look at this one, education is first. This person had 3 different degrees. So the Curriculum Vitae, like if you look at the Latin terminology of Curriculum Vitae, the terminology really means circle of life. The word resume, believe it or not, it really means summary. So when you think about circle of life and you think about all the things that you've done that are education related, that are part of like organizations and things like that, that's why the Curriculum Vitae can be so many pages, be such full of good information because it's about yourself. That's where you don't want to forget any of this information. And so that's why the headings can use a lot of creativity with them and then the information. So yesterday I was with one of my good friends doing a presentation in her class, and we were going over resumes and cover letters. So at the end of class, we got into a conversation about curriculum vitas, which ties right in today about how you maintain this information. So she said for many years, she was keeping a hard drive on her computer. She was saving the information. If she had a presentation, she went on a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet and saved that information and put it on there. So she has this working thing on her computer for trying to keep track of all this. Because if you look at some of these that are 16 or 20 pages long, it's a lot of information. You don't want to forget dates. You don't want to forget contacts if it was different things. Publications, you want to list those in the right format. So unfortunately for my friend, her computer completely crashed that all this information was on. So this is like a 5 or 6 year ago thing. So the recommendation that I'll give all of you is you can save your information if you want to on a USB drive, or you can save it on a Word document or Excel sheet and try to maintain that or keep that with you. She said what she did is she opened a Google Drive for herself that's particular for all this information, and she now saves everything on a Google Drive. She calls Google Drive her living USB, and I was like, that's the greatest thing I've heard all day today. So that may be the best recommendation for you all. We use Google enough here at UNLV, but that may be a great thing. Set up in your Google Drive, set up a folder when you're trying to keep track of all these things. It's accessible a lot of times even by the phone. You can get on there and add things. Hey, I attended this today. I don't want to forget to add it to your curriculum vitae. So that's one great way of doing it. USB still work. Those are still okay to do, but having it electronically now on some other area is like great advice. And so I said, hey, I'm going to use your advice tomorrow because that's really perfect. So on this example, so we have a little bit different format here. We have research interest. We got 3 or 4. This is a biological student. So 3 different research interests that are listed there. It could have been more. And then from right there, because it's research, they listed research and teaching experience. So here you have a research assistant here at UNLV, teaching assistant. And so what we try to do on this format, the reason why there's like 3 or 4 bullet points, we wanted to look clean and organized because it's an example. But when you guys work, if you guys work on the same document, all you guys got to do is put it in your own words, backspace it, copy and paste, do it however you want. So here's where we listed internship experience. So we had it as a separate heading here, relating back to the question that we had earlier. So intern, Las Vegas Valley Water District, list 3 bullet points there. Leadership experience. So we go to member, cultivate strong networking skills by participating in conferences. So I think that one got deleted, the part that was on there. Then we have publications. So here we're listing a couple different things that this person published. So this is APA format. So their last name, the name of the article, and then the journal that it was listed in. Conferences. So PitCon, Health Trust. So 2 conferences that are listed. It's kind of up to you on the format too, what you want to bold, what you don't want to bold. There's not really a rule with curriculum vitas, as you'll see here in a second when I show you my other example. Technology and skills. Yep.
Another question in the chat. They're wondering whether you need to indicate expected if the degree is December 2024.
Great question, but no, you do not. So what we've saw, and like people get it. So if somebody's looking at your resume or your curriculum vitae and you have May 2024, they know you're going to graduate in May 2024. The word expected, it doesn't hurt it. You can leave it on there if you want to keep it on there, it's fine. But most people know by reading that, oh yeah, you're graduating in 2024 in May, and they get that by just reading that, by knowing dates. Great question though. That comes up a lot. Anything else?
I got a quick question. Can
Yep.
you hear me?
Yep.
So if you scroll all the way back at the top, one of the things that I noticed was that they put their UNLV email. So is this CV for like applying for a like a doctor or like a professor, so to say, because they put their UNLV email, or should you put your personal email on the top when you're trying to apply for different positions?
No, Tanner, that's a great question. So in our presentations, we do this a lot. So when we put the phone number in the email, you want a professional email address. So like if you had something crazy from like 10 years ago that said whatever, and it doesn't look professional, we always recommend using a UNLV email address if you have it, because the formatting is very professional.
Okay, that makes sense, because I know that for some people they rather put like your personal email, because we're going to end up losing our email once we graduate. So that's why I was just asking.
Yeah, and then and that's a good question too. So when you guys graduate too, you have the ability to get an alumni email address too after your regular email address goes away. So you have that ability too. The whole thing, and this, when we do presentations about this, we talk about the two things: the phone number and the email. We're like, you can use whatever you want it to match. If you use your personal email on your application, because you'll type it in digitally, and then your resume, you want them to match. So use whatever matches. But if you have some crazy email address that looks weird because of whatever words are in it or whatever, maybe make a new one, make a simple Gmail or something else and put it on there. The other funny thing too is we go over phone numbers all the time. We're like, make sure you have a phone number. And then we always still say, make sure you have voicemail set up. So I know there'll be some people smiling, being like, oh yeah, I knew people back in the day that did not have a voicemail set up. So employers get a little frustrated by that when they try to reach out to you. So great questions.
And you
And then,
mentioned the alumni
yep,
email. How do we get that exactly? With the
you contact alumni services. Alumni will give you one. So after your ACES account disappears or goes away when you guys are done at school, then you contact UNLV Alumni Association. Don't worry, they're going to contact you anyway for donations and things, but they have a system to pretty quickly, I think it takes them less than a day now to set up an alumni address for you. And then I think once that's done, it's good forever too.
Oh, thank you. Because I know that UNLV, once we graduate, we can still use their career services and all that stuff. That was one of the main things that they're talking about at some of the other events. So that's actually really interesting. Thank you.
No problem, Tanner. That's my big sales pitch. Everybody, I say, hey, you get career services for life. So anybody, once they graduate UNLV, they have their degree, they can come back to career services anytime, and we will take care of them too. So last couple things on this. So employment history listed very similar to what the resume has on it. This one's expanded a little bit. So there's 5 bullet points on each. So it's pulling more information that may apply to the job description. Volunteer experience is listed on here under volunteer. This could also be added. Community engagement could be titled under that thing. So it's the same thing. So volunteer assistance. And then you also have the references. So I didn't have room to display it on here, but I went over references with you guys earlier. So any questions on this before I show you one more awesome thing? All right, so let me stop sharing this one and hopefully this works out great and I'll be happy. Let me go here. Great questions though. You guys have good questions today. So this is an example, and all I'm going to show you is a table of contents, because otherwise we could spend hours looking at this. But when I talk about like the maintaining, if you can use a Google Drive for your information or use something to make sure you're saving everything, because that's what you want to do, because you want to keep this up to date. You don't want like a 3-year window of life or a 4-year window of life to go by and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about my Curriculum Vitae. I didn't put anything on it. But when you look at this particular one, so this is when I talk about formatting being different. So where the gray bar is up here on top, you see this gray bar, that's where the name was and all the contact information. I had an address on here, I had a phone number, I had 2 email addresses because I had a work and a personal, so I had a bunch of stuff on here. So a little creativity that goes with that. So when you look at the headings, and we talk about headings quite a bit in today's presentation, when you look at this, 68 is the page on the last section on the end of this thing. But this is a genius idea too that this person did, because they have so much information. So when you look in here, you have professional positions listed, education, honors and awards, supervision of master students, graduate students, committee members, staff, undergrad, publication, research, consulting, professional service. The reason why I wanted to show this to all of you too, if you look at it, there's actually a pretty good system on how they did their headings. So if you think about it, it actually makes some pretty good sense. Research funding sources, research contracts. So that listed 2 separate things after publication. Publications and research usually go together because guess what? You're doing a lit review or you're doing some other activity to produce a document or to produce a journal article. So that's where those things, when you look at publication information for a lot of people, especially in education, they link together.
I have another great question in the
Yep.
chat. How many pages should you have before using a table of contents?
You know what, looking at this one, I would think if you're probably in the 20-page range, which is pretty long, that's probably a good idea for a table of contents. Great question too. I've seen some that are 16 or 20 pages. They don't have a table of contents, but like I said, that's why you have so much flexibility and creativity. We had one that I looked at that was like 2 pages of conferences and then like 3 pages of publications, which is amazing. And a table of contents would actually make it easier. This one's saved and done in Adobe. So Adobe has the ability to, hey, I want to go see research funding sources, click on it, and this will default and take you right to it. So which is some creativity added in this one also. Great questions. So that's it. That's the presentation, a couple different examples. I gave you guys a lot of information, a lot of different things, talking about the headings and talking about the layout, and going over several things. So any other questions?
We'll open the floor up for a little bit more questions if you guys have. You can just type them in the chat. You can ask me privately or you can unmute yourself.
So I'm assuming the approach to the CV would be similar to the resume, and that you gear it towards whatever you're submitting your CV for. So you would, you know how you adjust the resume to the job description. It's a parallel concept in the CV, or is the CV just always, all this body of work that I've done?
Evelyn, typically for the CV, it's typically the body of work. There's not a lot of tweaking that a lot of people can do on a CV that's really going to go to a job description. Some are, 15 pages long, 10 pages long. So there would be a lot of tweaking. The places where you could is like skills and technology or like certifications. Those are areas that you could probably move around that would make it try to match more to the job description. Typically in education, when we look at them here for professor positions and for staff positions that are like VPs, when we look at them, we're reading through the whole thing. I don't think I've ever had a problem with any of the format or any of the information that was in there in like the order it was listed. Resumes, yes, you want your resume to try to match because typically it's scanned electronically by a computer. It's looking for matches to the job description. So I see the question. So examples were for science. Yeah, for humanities, you can list the same type of information too. A lot of the headings can be the same. So not so much on the research side, but you could have a lot on the research side. And then if you're starting out like basic employment, as you mentioned, field of research, that's where you put your research interests and you write that out in several paragraphs. So what I always tell people too, when you do a cover letter and you talk about why you want to work for a job, if you have anything personal you can match it on there personally. In a curriculum vitae, it is not against anything to say, I had a family that experienced this problem with this. That's why I want to research this in the future too. So you can kind of expand upon that. That's where creativity can really play a part in doing a curriculum vitae. I don't know if I answered that very well.
Is there a personal statement on the CV?
There is not. So personal statements are completely different. Career services, we can help you with personal statements. Those are usually 1 page, and a personal statement is usually for like medical school, and it's your explanation on why you want to attend that school and what you want to do. So it's usually more of a quick little 1-page story. The Writing Center on campus is the place to go for personal statements. They are excellent over there working on those for you guys.
Thank you for answering that question.
Thank you for this entire presentation. Very informative, and I really learned a lot.
No problem, everybody. You guys know where I'm at. I'm here in Gateway. So if you guys need, we have walk-in hours, and you guys can reach out through Handshake too and set up appointments. So if you guys need help with any of this, we're more than happy to work with y'all and help you out.
Seems like we are out of questions. And before we end today's session, we would like to thank our presenter, Dr. Darren Vetter, for the great presentation and sharing your expertise with us. And thank to all the participants that came in and attended our workshop. Please fill out this survey that I'm dropping in the chat now. It really improves us with the workshops that we provide for you guys in the future. And have a nice day, everyone.
All right, guys. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.